It's the 2022 World Cup. It's Wales's Wales. Hello and welcome to the International Soccer Preview by Soccerphiles Canada. I'm Kevin.
And I'm Connor, and today we are looking at the Wales squad for the 2022 World Cup.
Right. Okay, well, that brings us to the end of the player-by-player discussion. And so we're going to finish the podcast with a discussion of the squad. And at the end, we'll kind of go through and talk about who we think are going to be starters. Let's begin with some notes then, and we'll actually go back to the takeaways from the previous podcast, so to some of those issues. We talked about a small group of players. Do you feel that they've added, or do you think it's an issue?
I think it can be a bit of an issue. I mean, Wales are a small country, just 3 million people. I think some of the newcomers, that they've drawn on are coming from the Championship or even League One, which can be a bit of a concern, to go from that level to playing, at the level of a World Cup or European Championship is quite a step up.
Yeah.
Wales have replaced some players from their 2016 years, like Robson Kanu and Ashley Williams and Chester. So some of those players have been replaced. So it's not like Wales haven't been able to deal with it, but I do think that the small pool of players does affect them to some degree. They really have a core, and they really have, I think, kind of a, maybe say 15 or 20 players who really make up their starters, with other players kind of in and out. So yeah, I think it's something that Wales and many smaller countries have to deal with.
Yeah. I'll put aging stars next, although it's in a different order above, because it kind of thematically is similar to what you're saying. They haven't really replaced that much. We're going to see they don't have a lot of new players. So what are they going to do when some of these players we've talked about in the player-by-player section age out?
Yeah, I think some are being replaced slowly, but perhaps not with the same quality. And I think you look at, in particular, Aaron Ramsey and Gareth Bale. You could possibly put Joe Allen in that category too. These are kind of generational players that don't come around that often. So I think for Wales, and going, like you said, tied in with the small pool of players, they're not likely to find a Gareth Bale replacement. They're not likely to find an Aaron Ramsey replacement, at least anytime soon.
Yeah.
So I think it's kind of part of the ups and downs, which I guess is the next point.
Yeah, that's kind of what I'm saying. I mean, if they're not able to replace these players, then I'm afeared, Connor, that we're moving into another down period for Wales.
Yeah, and Wales have always had some star players. You look at, Ryan Giggs stands out as a player who never made it to a major tournament, and Craig Bellamy, and good players. But what Wales have had recently is some star players surrounded by a very strong core. But I do think, they've achieved many great things as a team, kind of some remarkable feats if you look at it. But they maintain
better than the sum of their parts in terms of the backup squad.
100%. Yeah, they've really been overachieving since 2016. But whether they can manage the aging stars and kind of be on a sustained up, I think is likely. I think they realize that this is some of their golden generation players are reaching a peak. They're not likely to become World Cup regulars, but we'll really try and make the most of this opportunity.
Well, the key question is do you think they'll be stars during this Cup, or do you think their age will start to show?
I think the World Cup, they'll be incredibly motivated. There are players, the stars are in their 30s now, but they're not in their late 30s. So I think they have one more really good go at this, and I think this is that opportunity.
Yeah, they probably know that they got to make the best of it. Settled formation, we saw such a variety of formations over the thing. Do you think that's a problem?
I think it can be, but I think some of it reflects the fact that they often have to deal with injuries to Ramsey and Bale and other star players, and I think they kind of change formations a little bit to reflect that. I think if they have their full team fit and healthy, I think they can get a bit more settled. But yeah,
What do you see as their basic formation? They've been going with three at the back for a long time. I said since their thing, but I should clarify since the Euro Cup, the Euro Cup itself and the World Cup qualification games is what I mean, have had various formations. A lot of times three at the back. Do you see that as their basic formation?
I think if everyone's healthy, they've got enough offensive talent that they want to put in the squad. Um, I don't. I see possibly four at the back as their best system, and I'll kind of argue for that when we look at their squad because they do have talented players who can score goals. I think sometimes the three at the back is a bit to compensate when they are missing some of their key offensive players.
Interesting. All right, well, let's take a look at some of the stats for players. So we've been, oh no, we'll talk about club affiliations first. So you have already mentioned that a lot of them are kind of Champions League or perhaps even lower. Of course, we have Bale, who was with Real Madrid, and now he's over to Los Angeles. But and then, of course, Ramsey at well, not Juventus anymore, Nice. So actually, kind of playing into that maybe slight decline. Do you have any comments?
Yeah, I mean, the couple superstars are at some big clubs. They have a couple playing in Champions League, like Ben Davies and players with Rangers. But I think in general, they're kind of at championship level would be the average. They are, as you put it well, they're greater than the sum of their parts. They have a sprinkling of Premier League players, a sprinkling of League One players, but championship is kind of their base level on which the team is built.
Yeah, and we didn't mention Cardiff a lot just because we're fans. I mean, a lot of them came through the Cardiff system, and several of them are still with Cardiff.
And equally Swansea, we should
Yeah,
point out, to be fair, a lot have come through the Swansea system as
that's
well.
true. Yeah, that's true. Uh-oh, Swansea fans are going to be mad at us because we didn't point it out as often. Sorry, Swansea fans. Okay, well, let's talk about some stats then. So I've been running this kind of ongoing stat about how many total candidates are being dealt with. So I have to kind of mention the USA as at the top of that list. 69 players who have been called up since 2020. So they have a real selection headache. At the opposite end of the scale is Wales with just 42. The average being about 50. Any comments on that?
I think it goes back a little bit to the small pool of players on which to call. But Wales have really built, I think, a very strong team ethos. Again, it's players that, not at the biggest clubs or not huge stars in their own right, but really have risen to a very high level. They're a very united team, very together team, and I think that leads to the smaller number of players that we've seen.
Yeah, well, sorry, I should put in the number there, 42. Total players under consideration. This has turned out to be a bit of a fuzzy statistic with not a lot of distinction between the teams, but it could, on the one hand, if the number is low, indicate that they are undecided on their squad. Or it could indicate that they have a very solid squad and a stable group of starters. I guess we'd have to put Wales in the second category there.
Yeah, I agree.
And maybe this one indicates it more is how many players are. I've missed it. How many players are under consideration? And we can look at this in terms of if they have 22 players in the definite likely category, then roughly they have to choose 4 from among the possible candidates to make up the squad. So do you see Wales as having a selection problem of any kind?
I don't really. The only selection problem might be due to injuries, which hopefully there aren't many. But I think it's well put. I think they know who their starting lineup is. They know kind of some of the players that are important squad players or substitutes. I don't think there's a lot of headaches for Robert Page. I think he
Yeah.
knows mostly who the 26 are going to be, with just a few decisions to make.
Yeah, well, we have 33 in the definite, likely, impossible candidates. So some of those are going to get cut. But yeah, I don't see big selection headache. And then I would say probably there's always, say, 2 or 3 kind of surprising players who are maybe in form just coming up to the cup. So maybe some of the things we've said in the podcast will turn out not to be true. Let's look at the average age. For Wales, I was a bit surprised. It's 26. And the average is between 20. No, I wasn't surprised at this one. It was a bit younger than I thought. I thought they were a bit older, to be honest.
Yeah, I think the average, brought up by a couple players on the higher end, though I guess not too high for Bale and Ramsey. They're kind of early 30s. But they do have a large number of players in the 23 or under. I would definitely say that.
Yeah, I thought because they were a fairly stable squad, they would be a bit older, like Argentina and some of the stable squads. But they do have almost 10 players who are 23 or younger, so kind of balancing that out. Now, those players tend not to be the starter, so I think the on-field team will be a bit older than the overall average.
Yeah.
26.0, that is. Average caps, though, is actually higher than most teams. They have 32.6, whereas the average is among all the teams we've done so far is 27. So that indicates a bit more experience compared to most teams. Does that fit your mindset?
Yeah, and kind of goes to what you said. The with the being a bit more of a settled squad, that the caps is not surprising, or a little bit higher, even with the younger team. And we saw a lot of younger players actually having a lot of caps for Wales already.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Well, 92 total goals is quite a bit lower than average. The average is 111. These stats are a bit fuzzy, but I think this one proves out they're not a high-scoring team.
No, they would rely more on their defense to get results and winning low-scoring games. A shootout is not typically what you see in a Wales game.
Yeah, and we see they have a bit of trouble finding a forward who can really put the ball in the net, a centre forward, I mean. There. Okay, and that averages out to 3 goals per player. I'm not sure if that statistic is actually that meaningful, but again, it's a bit low. Among their scorers, who do you think has the highest percentage of goals?
I mean, I'm going to guess Bale, but it could be a newcomer. Kiefer Moore probably isn't too bad.
Yeah, Bale is actually impressive, 37.7%, so that's almost a goal every 3 games.
Wow.
Pretty good for a low-scoring team. Aaron Ramsey is above 25%, and good call on Kiefer Moore. 8 goals in 26 games puts him above 30%. So maybe I have to agree with you that he's the first choice centre forward. But yeah, beyond him, really, like nobody above 15%. Okay, that's that section. Now let's look at a couple of players and issues to watch. Of course, the big players, Gareth Bale and Aaron Ramsey. Do you have your eye on anyone else?
They're really the keys. I mean, it's a bit cliche with those 2 players, but they really have been Wales's 2 best players and most influential players for a long time. They tend to get the big goals to step up when it matters. So those are the main ones. I think Kiefer Moore is one to watch as well. But really, the 2 you mentioned, they are undoubtedly Wales' key players.
Yeah, we saw, we commented on Robson Kanu putting in an important goal. I wouldn't say he quite emerged in the Euro 2016 Cup, but do you see any younger players emerging here? Perhaps Brennan Johnson or Nico Williams?
I think Brennan Johnson would be the one to watch. He's really risen quickly from Nottingham Forest, having a sensational promotion campaign and off to an okay start in the Premier League. I think big things are expected from him, and I think he could, yeah, possibly work his way into the starting lineup as well. So Brennan Johnson, I think, is a key player and could be the next Welsh player to kind of hit the big heights. Not necessarily do I see him going to Real Madrid, but I think he could be a player to hit bigger things
Cool.
for Wales.
Great. Okay. Well, a couple of issues to watch out for. I don't know if you see it this way, but I see Ward as a starting keeper as a bit of a question mark.
Yeah, Ward started in the Euros, but Hennessy played the all important World Cup playoff game. So I actually think Hennessy is gonna be the starting keeper.
Interesting. Well, we'll talk about that a bit more in the starting lineup. You've kind of answered this one already, but I'm wondering, 4-man or 3-man backline. You like the 4-man backline as their natural thing?
I do. I know they've used the three a lot, but I think the 4-man allows them to have a bit more balanced attack and to showcase some of the talent that they have up front.
I'm beginning to agree with you that they might throw caution to the wind here, whereas in those other, qualification and stuff, and even Nations League against tougher teams, there's a temptation to be a bit more defensive. But I think they realize this is their last roll of the dice in the big time, possibly, and they may throw caution to the wind.
Yeah.
Okay, well, this next one, the last one, is a bit related to that. It was, is Ben Davies going to play as a right back or a centre back? So I guess if you're going with the 4, you would see him as a right back.
Yeah, I think he's left-footed, so possibly a left back instead. But
oh, sorry, I meant to say left back. Yeah.
Yeah, it could be either. I mean, he's not necessarily one to get up the field like Williams or Roberts, where if they want a lot of pace or they want their fullbacks bombing forward, Davies is the natural choice, but he's a key player and he'll find a spot somewhere.
Yeah, well, if they do have Kiefer Moore in the centre and are looking to kind of put in crosses and headers, I don't know how he is as a crosser, but it could be a strategy.
Yeah.
All right. Well, in the midfield, again, formation, a bit of a question because it's been very very mixed, but we won't repeat all that. And we've also talked about, are we going to see Bale and Ramsey at their peak? And you're inclined to say yes.
I am inclined to say yes. I think they're incredibly motivated to do well, and they often rise to step up for Wales on the big occasions.
That's true. They sure do. Okay. And on the attack, we really have the issue of the starting centre forward. Are you saying Kiefer Moore?
If he's healthy, I'm saying Kiefer Moore as the starting forward.
Okay, I maybe argue that maybe not at the beginning of the tournament, but if Brennan Johnson does emerge in the cup, that maybe he could be the man to get them the goals that they want. Wouldn't that be great?
Yeah.
Okay, let's take a look at a couple of the new candidates. None of them, well, a couple of them worth noting. Sorba Thomas. Didn't see a lot of starts since the World Cup, but has been called up regularly. Do you have high hopes for him?
More as a squad player than anything. He's still young. I think he'll work his way into the squad. But yeah, not a key player for Wales at this point.
Okay, Rabi Matonda is. We have him as a possible candidate, but. Plays for Rangers. We talked about his good club affiliations during the player-by-player.
Yeah, he's not new in the sense that he's been around since 2018. But as a young player, he does have a bigger role and could be taking that on soon.
Cool. Okay. Well, I've mentioned Brennan Johnson. I'm tempted to be bold and say this player is going to emerge in the cup, but that may be more hope than evidence-based.
Yeah.
We've talked about him, but any comments?
No, this tournament will be kind of our first chance to see him on the big stage, but I expect to see him around more, and hopefully he can have an impact at this tournament for sure.
That would be great. And Mark Harris, just first cap in 2022, but has played 5. Do you have high hopes for him?
Again, I see him more as a squad player, a depth player. Maybe someone coming off the bench. Yeah, as opposed to a starter.
Yeah, and it would be a surprise if he emerged, but a pleasant surprise. A couple of injuries to keep an eye out for. Joe Morrell was missed the last three matches. Those were in June with a fractured toe, but I see he's not really on the injury list, so I'm guessing he's over that.
Hopefully.
And yeah, hopefully. And Harry Wilson missed the last game in June with a knee injury, and he might have had knee surgery, but he is expected back in early October.
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say that would be good. He has been a big part. I'm not always a starter, but he has been a big part of kind of the run up to this tournament. So I hope for his sake that he's fit and healthy.
Yeah, now you during the podcast talked about a few players who, if not recovering or whatever from injury, are at least kind of fragile players that cause Wales to have injury concerns, which you even thought may be responsible for the changing lineups.
Yeah.
Do you want to comment on that, or do you think they're all pretty healthy going into the Cup?
As of now, fingers crossed, they seem pretty healthy. So, yeah, I mean, it has been something that's plagued some of their key players, but they all look healthy right now, and I think they're not going to probably do too much to risk it over the next little while.
Right. Okay. Well, the last section is notable absences. So we don't have any big stars leaving the club. You mentioned Ashley Williams, but he was gone kind of after Euro 2016. Hal Robson-Kanu wasn't part of Euro 2020, but he did play with the squad till 2021. And then the other one, we had an interesting conversation about David Brooks. And you seemed, we were kind of a bit hopeful that he might make it back to the squad. Do you want to just comment on these?
Yeah, I think Robson-Kanu is definitely out of the picture. For David Brooks, he had that cancer. He seems to be coming back. This tournament may come too soon in terms of match fitness, but it would be great to see him return for Wales one day.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I would sure love to have him in the Cup, but as you say, may need a bit more recovery time. Okay, well, let us move on to the ones that we were going to, the players we think are going to start. I just put Ryan Giggs in there more to give an update on his situation, but Robert Page, of course, will lead them through the Cup. They wouldn't change at this point. Let's talk about goalies, though. Do you see Danny Ward has been the starter, but kind of maybe towards the end wasn't so much?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting in that Ward is getting first team playing time with Leicester, whereas Hennessy is not with Forest. But Hennessy was there for the playoff game, so I would tip my hat towards Hennessy and think he'll be the starter.
Oh, really? Bold indeed. I was going to put them kind of in blue, not to suggest that they're substitutes, which blue usually means, but to suggest that it's kind of undecided. Should we fight?
I think there's arguments for both. You've chosen the peaceful way to put them both blue. I still think it's Hennessy, so but we'll see. We'll see.
Yeah, I usually tend to just put green as the ones I'm really sure about. So I appreciate what you say about Hennessy, but I wouldn't say he's a definite starter for me. All right, well, let's leave it at that because it's not definite. But three central midfielders, you think they're going to go with two at the back? That means one of these have to go. Chris Meffam, Joe Rodon, Ethan Ampadu. We have them all as definite to make the squad, but who do you think's going to start?
Yeah, you mentioned midfielders, but we're talking about central defenders.
Oh, sorry. Okay.
I do think I'm going to go for a four at the back system, and I think Meffam and Rodon will be the starters with Ampadu coming off the bench or perhaps playing in a versatile role, but Meffam and Rodon are the two I see. Do you agree?
Well, I do see Meffam and Rodon. You seem more sure they're going to go with the back four, but I'm actually thinking they've gone with the back three for kind of the second half of qualifying, so they may like that, but we've talked about that. But anyway, if it's a back three, it'll still be those two. And in fact, I kind of agree with you because I see Ben Davies as more likely to be part of a back three if it is that than Ethan Ampadu. So I think Ethan Ampadu, a definite to make the squad, but not a definite starter.
Yeah.
Okay, well, for left backs, whether he's going to be a left back or central midfielder, I think Ben Davies is a definite starter. You agree?
I agree. They'll make room for him. He's such an experienced player for them.
Yeah, I mean, people can look for a bit of shifting in position, which Wales is definitely used to doing. As a right back, what do you say? I'll let you start this one.
Yeah, they have some good candidates there in Roberts, Gunter, and Williams. But I think Roberts has got the nod recently, so I'm going to go Connor Roberts starting in right back.
What? Nico Williams not even a starting player?
He could possibly show up on the left hand side as he's done before if Ben Davies is a center back. So he might in a wing back position show up. But they've got some good options. But I think Connor Roberts, he just has more games for them.
He does, whether he's a right back or kind of moves up to midfield as he has been doing. I think he's a starter. I kind of think that they're going to find room for Nico Williams as a starter, but I'm not ready to highlight him in green. How about you?
Yeah, I would put him as a substitute, but would not be surprised to see him starting. He is getting game time for Forest now, which is important.
Yeah, I'm generally using blue either for undecided or someone who's definitely going to be a substitute. I think I'll just leave him blank for now because I'm really not sure. Kind of halfway between. I don't see any of the defensive midfielders as starters. Of course, Ramsey as a more attacking central midfielder. I think we don't have to talk about that. But how about the other ones?
Yeah, seeing kind of two holding midfielders as I do in the system I'm envisioning a 4-2-3-1. I think both Joe Allen and Joe Morel will start in the holding midfield positions.
Okay, I think Joe Morel is definite there, but okay, I'll give you the selection: green or blue.
I'm
Joe
gonna
Allen.
go green.
Okay, I'll give it to you. I'm a bit more inclined towards a bit doubtful, but this position, defensive midfielder, two of them is quite possible, and I don't think Joe Morrell's injury is a concern. Do you think Gareth Bale will make it onto the field?
I think he'll more than make it on the field. I think he'll be the first name on the team sheet.
Yeah, for sure. Less certain, though, Daniel James. I see him as a starter.
I'm going to disagree. I think he hasn't been in the best club form, whereas I think Brennan Johnson has. So Daniel James has occupied kind of that either the right or left winger, kind of attacking winger spot. But I'm going to say Brennan Johnson more than James, even more than Harry Wilson. That's my pick.
How bold. I kind of agree with you, definitely about the club form. He's as we said in the player-by-player, kind of too often invisible. Yeah, I'm not confident enough. I think he will start, but I'm not confident enough to put him in green. Maybe we'll do the same thing we did with goalies, because I think Brennan Johnson, they will be interested in kind of making him into a starter if they can.
Yeah. James has played well for Wales, though, kind of club form aside. So there is that.
Yeah. I mean, if he plays like he did, in when he's outstanding, terrorizing down the wing, he's great. But we just don't see it often enough. I'm not seeing any other names here that I would view as starters.
No.
Until we move on to forwards. So we have Mark Harris as definite to make the squad, but probably Kiefer Moore, who we considered likely, but more likely to be the starter. Do you think so?
I think so. I think he's part of the best 11. He's got a good goal ratio for Wales. He's a big target man. He's a nuisance to play. So I think Kiefer Moore will start up front.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if that changed during the Cup, especially if Brennan Johnson comes on, or a bit less likely Mark Harris making an impression. But I think Kiefer Moore will start, hopefully do well, and hold on to that position. All right, well, that brings us to the end. And keep in mind, we're going to be doing an update both on team and players as new information comes out. So probably after the final roster has been decided upon, but we can also tell you who made the preliminary roster. And that'll probably be in early November when teams are putting out some information. We also have September and October games to check what we predicted against and see how things are shaping up.
Mm-hmm. And meanwhile, keep an eye on us at Soccerphiles Canada. That's Soccerphiles with a PH in the middle and an S at the end. And our website, soccerphiles.captivate.fm. And check the show notes for links to our website and previous podcast series.
All right. Well, thanks for listening, and goodbye. We hope to see you in our next media cast.
Bye.